Deirdre, how would you describe Rhonda Perlman?
I would describe Rhonda as very committed, very rough around the edges, and compassionate inside, and very much a survivor in a man's world. I mean, the ability to accomplish what she did in that situation made her sort of she was sort of a hero for me. But really a good conscience and a champion of sorts.
I mean, obviously talking about Rhonda and everything, how did this journey begin for you? I mean, did you audition for her, or was it somebody else?
It's an interesting story, actually. I went in for an audition. I got a call from my agent for this new HBO series, and at the time, The Sopranos was very, very popular. And there were 2 women in the show, and I thought, oh, right, a new series on HBO. And there are only 2 women in it. I'm sure I'm going to get that. So my radar was very much relaxed and not stressed. And I went in and saw all the famous people and did my audition and left, and I got a call back, and, you know, I got the part. It was one of the easiest jobs that I've ever gotten, and I think it's because, for whatever reason, when things are supposed to happen, they happen, and it was just sort of meant to be her for me.
Had you read the book, obviously Homicide, or David Simon's The Corner, beforehand?
I had seen The Corner. I had read Homicide, and I was not an avid Homicide viewer, but certainly, had seen it many times and appreciated the quality of the writing. But yeah, so I was familiar with his work, but not intimately, and came to be more acquainted during The Wire, of course.
So what was their process with you? David Simon, Ed Burns, the writers. How did they relate to you? Did they pull you to one side every so often, or were they much more open?
Sure. I can tell you that initially my character was not supposed to be, Rhonda was not supposed to be a regular on the show. And the experience of marching through a 12-episode season was very, very different than the experience of being able to sort of collectively know the whole storyline and experience the impact of the message. We would get the script the day before. We would, not know what was coming next for our character. David would, I think with me twice in 5 seasons, pulled me aside and said, this is what's going to happen, because he really didn't like people knowing what their character was going to go through, because, it's a tell. And the character doesn't know what's going to happen next, so the element of surprise was important for him in terms of keeping the integrity in his storytelling, I think.
Well, Assistant State's Attorney Rhonda Perlman is basically responsible for the whole wiretap, really, because if she'd have said no...
Right.
Well, it would have been a different show, wouldn't it?
It certainly would have been. And the interesting thing is, we live in such a quickly evolving technological era. I remember distinctly when the show was about to premiere, telling people, having to explain people what a wiretap was, and people, oh yeah, of course, I think I've heard of that, and certainly no one knew what a burner was, and now it's so old school, that technology is digitized and everything else, but and it's sort of common in the lexicon now because of The Wire. So, yeah.
When you got that, obviously that scene where you said to them, "Yes, we're going ahead with it." Did you think, "Yes, I've really got a pivotal moment here. This is it"?
Absolutely not. I'm being completely honest with you. And I assume you're talking about the character and not me, or me and as opposed to the character.
Well, yourself, really, when you thought, I'm not going to be in it that much, but hang on a second, maybe I am now.
Never had a clue. Really didn't. I mean, from one week to the next, from one season to the next, it was always a surprise because we weren't necessarily, or at least I wasn't, constantly privy to what was in David Simon's head, didn't know that, in season 2 that it was going to be all in the docks during, the middle of season 1. Didn't know lots of things ahead of time. And, that's, I guess, the element of surprises was his friend, so.
Were you surprised about how much Rhonda was involved with the police day to day? Because normally when you watch, a standard crime show, they're sort of off to the side. You see them occasionally, but Rhonda's in it all the time.
No, I wasn't surprised. I thought it was just as it should be. I really, I do know that the attention to authenticity and detail was very realistic. And Rhonda was certainly never present when she wasn't supposed to be or wouldn't have been in actuality. I remember in season 2 there was one scene that she was written into that it was the raid of the brothel with the Russian girls. And there's a raid where McNulty is captured in sort of a compromising situation with the girls, and Perlman was actually written to be present at that raid, and I was so excited because I was like, oh, vests, storming, police, and David was like, no, I don't. You know what? It's not you. She wouldn't be there, and I was like, but who's going to notice? Well, he would have noticed, right? So little things like that, very realistic, and the integrity of authenticity was very important always, I think.
I mean, the show obviously is about social class, politics, and race, and I think that's partially why it didn't connect initially with a major audience. It had its core audience, but it didn't go beyond that. I mean, were you worried about it not reaching further afield?
I was never worried. I don't think I don't think worry is applicable. I do know that on the other side of that, when the DVDs were released, and when the show really sort of got a second life because of people's access to, what they missed if they couldn't jump in the middle, and people always said you have to watch it from the beginning. But in terms of wishing more people would watch, you also have to have some context in terms of the evolution of our cable and our internet networks. At that time it was HBO, Sunday on HBO, or Showtime, and the explosion of other cable channels hadn't kicked in, and so there was that. There was sort of always access to a certain set of subscriber audience, as it were. But I think more importantly, what disappointed me was knowing what a great show it was, knowing how in terms of television, it actually was trying to say something useful and important. I was concerned and disappointed at the time that the show was sort of, treated like the poor black sheep of the family. I didn't feel like the network necessarily got behind it, because they didn't. The viewership was extremely low, and I know that, it was actually canceled after the second season, I believe. But, things work out the way they're supposed to. If it had been wildly popular back then, if HBO had really gotten behind it, perhaps it wouldn't have sort of the longevity it has now. I don't know. So, yes, disappointed no, not surprised, I guess, would be my answer.
Let's lighten it up then, and let's talk about Rhonda's relationship with McNulty. My first question is, do you think Rhonda was just looking for, a relationship that was just a couple of nights a week, or was she in it for the long haul?
Well, Rhonda was married is married to the law, and is married to her mission and her career. And, it's hard to find somebody that will allow that to be first, if not to exist side by side. And so I of course, I think she wound up being very happy, but not without experiencing a lot of heartbreak first. But I think her first true love was the law and seeking justice and trying to make a difference in that particular society.
So Jimmy McNulty wasn't second then?
Ha 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 ha! Second, I think it was somewhere lower than that, I would imagine. But a bad penny that kept turning up. No, I think she had, that heartbreak was very real. And as in life, hope springs eternal. But it all worked out the way it was supposed to.
I mean, talking of, obviously, Jimmy McNulty, when you first met Dominic West...
Wait, say that again? Jimmy McNulty.
Jimmy McNulty.
Jimmy McNulty.
Well, this is what's going to lead me on to it. Were you surprised at his accent when you first met him?
And not as surprised as he was, because he had like 3 days to become an American. From Baltimore. I was, and I think it's a tribute to Dominic's ability to think on his feet that he pulled it off as quickly as he did. Although, when you go back to first seasons or second seasons or even other seasons, it is amusing to try to listen to where it goes a little bit awry.
Well, Rhonda actually gets quite a nice upbeat ending, considering the show and everybody else like that. I mean, were you surprised about how upbeat it was for her?
Only in that it seemed very sort of like a nice reward and very sort of just, which in that world is not to be expected ever. So I don't know if I was surprised. I thought, oh, isn't that great? Because, at least somebody's getting, a happy ending, or at least is continuing on in a place to be of further service, which I know was, it's nice to have some good eggs sitting on the bench. And, I think I was pleased.
I've got to bring something up with you because I spoke to Lance Reddick and he said one of his abiding memories of working on The Wire was a sex scene with you because he was very nervous and you relaxed him. Now, what does that mean and what does that entail?
Well, isn't that nice? Thank you, Lance. He was like, yeah, you do this. I was like, I've done it twice. He was like, that's 2 more times than me. That's such it's crazy that actors have to do what we do. But Lance was nervous, and so I can't remember exactly what I did, but I think I just spoke about it and addressed the elephant in the room, and told him that we were in this together and that it was all going to be okay and it would be over very soon. The great thing, I have to tell you, there's a story from the first season, because my first day of shooting in season 1 was that sex scene with McNulty. And we were at this location hi, Dominic, nice to see you again, meet you for, climb on. And we were doing the sex scene from, I can't remember what episode it is, but one of the first ones in season 1. And the director was Hungarian and kept screaming at the top of his lungs in this house that was in, a rented house in the city. The climax, no, and louder. And the owners of the house, who had rented it to the production company, were on the 3rd floor with their sleeping son, and thought we were doing porn. And so Rhonda's house changed after that, and the crew, for a wrap gift in season 1, had shirts made that said, "Climax now," and I wish I could find mine. Anyway, that's the end of that story. Did I answer the question? Oh, yes. I'm glad that I put Lance at ease, and a sweeter man there is not on the planet, so it was not difficult, I'm sure.
Did you get nervous at any point
during the sex scene?
Well, no. When the show started, or was there at one point where you thought, "Wow, this is really important"? You was getting nervous about it.
About the show in general?
Well, a scene in specific, really.
I do remember thinking how visually, when we were on location, on the streets of West Baltimore, and there were alleys that looked like they'd been dressed by the art director that indeed hadn't, with the stacked mattresses and the trash and the glass and the rodents. That I remember thinking, wow, I don't think I've ever seen this on TV. I've never, there's no iconography for this certainly for me. And I think, the lens on that particular segment of society for me as a white girl from Indiana was extremely illuminating. And, for me, I learned how, where my racist psychology was so embedded that I didn't even realize it was there. And in that way, it was very instructive and unlike anything I'd ever experienced before. I think I got a little off track, but
that's fine. In fact, talking about going off track, I just want to step away from The Wire for a minute, talk a couple of questions about TV and film. I mean, TV, I don't think we've got time to list the amount of great shows you have been in. I mean, if people want to look, it's on IMDb. But I just want to ask you, what have you learned from all of these shows? Because you've been in so many great stuff.
Well, thank you. That's very kind. I think I could probably hang a shingle on the door and says, and practice law somewhere. I've played a lawyer so often. It's the gift of being an actor is we get to learn about so many different things, whether it's, a profession or an illness or a segment of society that we hadn't been familiar with. And every experience that I am lucky enough to be a part of teaches me something, and I learn from it, and I always enjoy it. So, I'm just grateful always, and I love what I do. So I'm lucky.
I'm not going to ask you to pick your favourite show, because we all know that it's The Wire, obviously. But one or two of the shows apart from The Wire that you've really enjoyed?
I love House of Cards. Love. Oh my gosh, there are so There are so many. There really are so many. And why can't I think of one? I thought of House of Cards, and you know what? I'm gonna pop out television shows during the next 2 questions, and then we'll have an answer to that one.
We'll come back to it.
I was a big 6 Feet Under fan. They're a little bit, older. And right now I'm digging Bloodline a lot. So, yeah, it's the best I can do right now. But I know there's a good one in there somewhere.
Well, obviously you popped up in films as well. And one film I do want to ask you about is Sour Grapes. Larry David... Larry David's only directorial film. I mean, what is he like to work for?
Well, you know what? It was a very, very long time ago. But I do remember my audition because it was like a 2-line part. It was a very long time ago. I had 2 lines or 3 lines or something, and I went in the room with Larry, and I think I said my 2 lines, and I did something like, and scene, and was ridiculously egotistical and did something funny, and he just laughed. And so I did just see his show on Broadway a couple weeks ago, and very, very funny still. And it was fun. It was, it's Larry David. What are you going to do?
Final question, going back to The Wire, obviously, and I just want to know, what are your memories of that time? When you look back at it now, what do you think of instantly?
I think of what, believe it or not, how sort of innocent and enthusiastic and young we all were. We didn't know that we were making such an iconic, substantial, lasting piece of television, or maybe everyone else did. I certainly didn't. I thought it was a great show. I thought it had something incredibly significant to say. But when years and years later, people are still saying it's one of the best television shows ever made in history, period. That sort of that mindset didn't exist in Baltimore in 2002. I think it was a really great group of people, and I think we all really came together and did our best, because it was very exciting to be experiencing not only that writing, but to be telling that story actively, because that was very revelatory back then, and that was fresh and exciting and significant and important at the time and in the moment. I think of when we would all go to the Preakness every year. Janice, the makeup lady, would get us tickets to the governor's tent in the middle of the track, and we'd spend the day betting on horses and enjoying Pimlico. I think of the city of Baltimore, which I enjoy going back to, actually, and the time that we spent there, and getting to know the city and the people through the eyes of trying to tell their story. I think of a lot of things, and I'm grateful still, and I'm looking forward to. We're actually having a bit of a reunion this summer. All of us, directors and crew and cast. The significance of that particular show as an event in all of our lives is, I think the same for all of us. And we were going to have have it take place in a let's say a lovely tropical beachy location where we could all enjoy little drinks with umbrellas on the beach, and sand in our toes, and casino chips in our pocket, perhaps. And after the events in Baltimore, it's going to be in Baltimore. It's been moved because, there is a sense of commitment and obligation to show up for that city still, many, many, many years later. And so that's what we're going to do.